Hello everyone and welcome back to PFJ. Today we are going to talk about retirement. So far we have talked about how pre-tax accounts work, how post-tax accounts work, how taxes work. Last video we talked a little bit about how pre-tax accounts and taxes work together. Now we're going to take this video and put everything together. If you have not seen the last few videos, please go ahead and watch those because this video will not make as much sense without watching them. You can find them under my channel under the basics playlist. So let's talk about retirements. We have talked about how there are post-tax accounts and how there are pre-tax accounts. Post-tax accounts, you have the salary up front. This goes into an account. This account grows over time and then you get the money out at the end. And we talked about how taxes are taken out up front, and then in pre-tax world, the opposite happens where the money goes into the account first, then you get your salary, and as a result, because your salary is a little bit less, your taxes are a little bit less, and then some point later, after the money grows, you get the money out. And here you're taxed not up here, but you're taxed here. And over here, you are taxed up here, as we said, and not down here. So I wanted to take an example and actually walk through how this would actually work in a person earning so much money over so many years, and what does that look like at the end when they are about to retire. To make this simple, we're going to use the 2022 tax rate for a single person. The math is the same for people who are married or filing jointly. The brackets change a little bit, but I want to go through the exercise of actually just doing the math so you guys know how all this works. We'll assume that the person earns 100K and we're doing this over 20 years, meaning they're putting away money for 20 years and after 20 years they're gonna retire. So for post-tax accounts, going back to our very first videos, we talked about how both of these accounts have limits on them. So for post-tax account, that limit for 2022 filing single is going to be 6K a year. So say we do that over the next 20 years. What that looks like is that you put away 6K times 20. Now, if you multiply 6K over the 20, you would expect that is how much money is in the account. This comes out to be 120K. But remember that there is also growth associated with this account. This envelope has been getting bigger year to year. Since most of our money, when we invest them, tends to be in the stock market, and the stock market grows at about 7% a year, we'll assume that this is 7% growth year to year to year. This is something called compound interest, and we'll talk about that at a later time. For now, I'm just going to tell you guys the numbers. There's a lot of different compound interest calculators out there. You can plug and chug these numbers in there as well, and they will give you the same numbers. But if we say that the person was putting away $6,000 a year for 20 years, and the money was growing at 7% every year, the numbers you actually get is that this account is worth about 246K. So I think the actual number is about 245,972, but I'm just going to round it up to 246 to make the math easier. This shows you how much important the growth part of this curve is. If there was no growth in the account, you would only have 120K, but because of the growth, the account has more or less doubled in the last 20 years. Now, what I want to do is just make that remark over here. So we'll call that savings. In our Roth account, we had 246K, but we only paid taxes in 120K because taxes were paid up front and we only did 6K for 20 years, which equals 120K. So we only paid taxes on the 120K here, but at the end we had 246K. So this equals, meaning on $126,000, we did not have to pay any taxes, which is pretty sweet. Now let's do the same thing with pre-tax accounts. Now pre-tax accounts, as we talked about before, is a tad bit more complicated because taxes are paid down here. Now the limit do exist for pre-tax accounts as they do for post-tax accounts. Now the limits for pre-tax account here is 20.5K per year. A person earning 100K, we would just take out the 20.5K, so that would mean their salary is about 79.5K. Now on 79.5K, you're paying taxes, and the taxes have reduced a little bit because instead of paying taxes on 100K, you're paying taxes on 79.5K. So what does that look like at the end of the account? You've been putting away about $2,500 per year for 20 years. So we'll do the same thing with it over here. So we have 20.5K times 20 years. This equals about $410,000. Now that's a lot of money, but we also have to accommodate for the growth, just like we did here. This account has been growing a little bit by a little bit every year. We'll assume that this was also in the stock market. This also grew at 7%. I'm going to put this into the same calculator I did before. This is called the compounding calculator. So at 7% every year, this comes out to be about 840K. The exact number is about $8,243, but I'm just running down to make the math easier. So this equals 840K, which again shows you how strong compounding is because your money more or less just doubled. So previously we had done that in a Roth account. We had about $246,000 at the end of our 20 years, but we only put in 120, so we saved 126, meaning we paid no taxes on that. So we want to do the same analysis on our pre-tax accounts. And we know how much we put into the account, but we don't know how much taxes we're paying because we haven't taken the money out of the account. We need to figure out how much money we're taking out, and we need to do that more or less year to year. So first, we need to kind of figure out what our yearly expenditure is, meaning how much money do we need to live from year to year. The way we can do this is by assuming that the amount of money we used in pre-retirement we're going to use in retirement. So let's just figure out how much money did we actually spend on clothing, food, just living our life prior to retirement. So let's go back to how much we made. So we made 100K. Of that, 20.5K went into our pre-tax accounts. 6K went into our post-tax accounts. So right there, we are left with 73.5K. Now, prior to retirements, there's a lot of other expenditures, such as mortgages, putting kids through college, a lot of different things. I'm just gonna pick the biggest of them. The biggest of them tends to be the mortgage. So I'll assume here that on the low end, this was about $10,000 a year. Usually mortgages are a lot more, but just to be conservative with the numbers, I'm assuming $10,000. So this puts us at 63.5K, meaning year to year, we lived on $63,500. Now, as we retire, we won't have a mortgage because hopefully we're paid off our mortgage. We won't have the $20,500 we need to put in pre-tax because we're in retirement. Same thing for 6K. Just to kind of make the math easier, we'll just say that this is $65,000. To live off of, we need $65,000 a year. Now, how do we decide where we get this money? Because we have two accounts. We have our post-tax account, which has $246,000, and we have our pre-tax account, which has $840,000. A good way to decide where that money comes out of is a combination of both accounts. Going back to our tax video, we talked about that there are buckets, right? If you haven't seen this video, please check out my basics playlist on my channel. And we talk about taxes and how each bucket is a different percentage, and it goes up the more buckets you fill. So since we need $65,000 a year, you're going to be filling up those buckets until you get to the $65,000. Now the last bucket, again, is going to be the most expensive bucket. So the goal will always be not to fill this bucket. So if you use your post-tax, which is you don't have to pay taxes on, to fill this last bucket, you can get rid of paying for this last bucket, which tends to save you a lot more taxes in retirement. You could do that, you just use the post-tax money for everything, but you only have $246,000, you need 65. If you divide 246 by 65, you are going to end up with about 4 years. So purely doing it for post-tax, you're going to run out of money in 4 years, and then you would have to go and use the pre-tax money and then end up filling this last bucket more. which is going to cost you more in taxes. You could go the route of, hey, let me just bite the bullet and use up all my pre-tax money, which is 840K. And when I'm really, really retiring and towards the end of my life, I don't have to worry about taxes at all. You could do that as well, but then you're going to be filling this last bucket more, again, paying more in taxes. So from this, it's usually a good idea to mix both pre-tax and post-tax money to get the best outcome. Now, what does that look like in real life? So coming back up here, you have 246 and 840. So in our post-tax accounts, we have 246K, and in our pre-tax account, we have 840K. So if you were to add these together, this equals about 1,086K. That's how much you have saved for retirement. Now, you only need $65,000 to live off of. So if we take this money and divide this by 65K, this equals 16.7 years. This represents that if you take out $65,000 every year from this money, you would have money for about 16.7 years. So we have to make both of these accounts last for 16.7 years. So in a year, you would take out 246 divided by 16.7. Same thing here, 840 divided by 16.7. These would look like 14.7K here and about 50.3K here. So from our pre-tax accounts, we are taking out $50,300 every year. So now that we know how much money we're taking out from this account, we can figure out our taxes. So if you go back up to here, we know that we're taking out about 15.3K a year. Hello everyone. I'm going to stop the video here today as we're already at 12 minutes and I still have quite a bit of information to go through. I'm going to split this video in two parts and part 2 will be out next week. I wanted to quickly summarize what we've gone through so far. We're trying to figure out how much money we would save in taxes with both post-tax and pre-tax accounts. Post-tax accounts are ridiculously simple to do because we're paying taxes up front. Since we're paying taxes up front, all the money left in the account is tax-free money. So since we know the limit, which is $6,000 for post-tax accounts per year, we can very easily figure out the taxed income in that account. So that's what we did here. We knew that we put in $120,000 because 6,000 times 20, and then the account grew to $246,000. So if we subtract the two, we're left with $126,000, which is tax-free income. Now with pre-tax accounts, it's a lot harder to do. Even though we know how much money we're putting into the account, which is 20.5K, and we know how much the account is going to grow to, which is 840K, we don't know how much taxes we're paying on any of this. That's because we pay taxes when we take the money out of the account. Now, because we still have a progressive tax system regardless of age, we still have a bucket system. So the more money we take out, the more buckets we fill. So if one year we take out 100K, we fill a whole lot more buckets and we pay a lot more in taxes. While another year we only take out a 10K, so we fill a whole lot less buckets and pay a lot less in taxes. So we do have to go through the exercise of actually figuring out how much money we will be using in retirement. In an example, we assume that our lifestyle before and after retirement will be the same, and we came up with a number of 50.3K per year. Now we know that we can figure out how much taxes we have to pay every year, and as a result, how much taxes we have to pay on the 840K left in the account. So in order to figure out how much money pre-tax system saved us, we just need to subtract how much money we would have paid in taxes if we did not use the system from the taxes we would pay if we did use the system. We're going to go through that math in part 2 of the video. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe. I know this video was complicated, so if you guys have any questions, please drop them in the comments below and I will answer them. Have a good one.